The thing that we're interested in here is not just lobbying in the abstract, but in the context of what's happened in our society in the last 20 years. Now, we would argue, and you might differ on this or you might not, that there's been a huge increase in the influence that corporations have in society. And that's one of the key reasons why lobbying has become more important than it was. It's one of the reasons why the lobbying industry has grown, but it's also one of the reasons why it's more politically important. And just to illustrate that, one can see the events of the last week, the collapse of the biggest company in Scotland, Halifax Bank of Scotland, where the corporations are able to lobby for the deregulation of financial markets. The markets then collapse, and what happens is that the public money is then used to bail them out. Here's a real issue where the corporate power has led to an utter disaster. Everyone agrees it's a disaster, and then taxpayers take the responsibility for bailing out the corporations. And that's why we think that the process by which corporate decisions are taken needs to be opened up to more transparency. That means, yes, I agree with John, it means disclosure of clients, but we think that it means mandatory disclosure of clients. We think that there will not be any chance of significant numbers, or nearly enough, of the lobbyists signing up unless it's mandatory. But it also means the disclosure of how much they paid, how much the lobbyists are paid by which clients, for what purpose. Such a system is not beyond the bounds of possibility. It already exists in the US and a number of other countries. So we think that that's a key issue, that there needs to be more transparency. One of the other reasons that we think there's an issue here is the close connections that you have between political parties and corporate interests. Next door, there's a meeting by the Foreign Policy Centre, whose meetings today and yesterday have been sponsored by, amongst others, Vattenfall, Coke, Rio Tinto, KPMG, that's the one that's just finishing, and a lovely company called Party Gaming. Okay, so we think there's a real issue about those connections, and that's not just solved by disclosure, but also by controls on the ethical behaviour of MPs and civil servants and ministers, in particular in relation to the revolving door, where lobbyists and ministers and MPs go round and round between the private and the public sectors. We think that's a really important element of this as well, not just the question of disclosure, but also enhanced ethics regulation. So as a last point, I would say that what is the problem with lobbying? And I think that John's right to say that everyone has the democratic right to lobby. But the function of lobbying in society is not determined by the mere fact of the existence of lobbying. It's determined by its overall role. If lobbying actually undermines democracy, undermines the ability of the people to rule, which is what democracy means, you'll recall, then lobbying can be a negative force in society. If it actually enhances it, it can be a positive.